Every new ranger receives rule number 11 separately. Not in the handbook. Not during orientation. Not in the weekly briefings. They wait until you're alone. Then they tell you. I learned that on my third night at Ranger Station 7. By then, I'd already seen enough strange things to understand why the Appalachian Wilderness Authority existed. Officially, we were a federal conservation agency. Unofficially, we were the wall between civilization and everything that lived beyond the edges of recorded history. Most people thought monsters were stories. Most people had never stood 50 feet from something that wore a human face like a poorly fitted mask. I had. Twice. The first time was during training. The second time was the reason my predecessor's cabin still sat empty. Nobody wanted it. Nobody would even enter it. At exactly 11:11 p.m., Chief Ranger Warren knocked on my door. I checked the clock. 11:11. Not 11:10. Not 11:12. Exactly 11:11. That should have been my first warning. The old ranger stood outside holding a lantern. Not a flashlight. A lantern. The flame inside burned blue. Every survival instinct I possessed immediately started screaming. "Get your jacket," he said. "Why?" "Rule 11. I stared at him. The handbook contained 10 official rules. Everyone knew them. Never follow voices after sunset. Never investigate distant campfires. Never enter abandoned fire towers. Never answer whistles. Simple things. Dangerous things. But there was no Rule 11. At least not on paper. Warren looked exhausted. Not physically. Spiritually. Like a man carrying something far heavier than age. "You've reached the point where you need to know." "Know what?" He glanced over his shoulder toward the dark forest. Something moved between the trees. A shape. Tall. Far too tall. Then it vanished. His voice dropped. "Rule 11 is different for every ranger." That answer raised more questions than it solved. "What does that mean?" "It means what I'm about to tell you applies only to you." The cold knot in my stomach tightened. "I don't understand." "You will." He turned. "Walk with me." Against my better judgment, I followed. The station sat atop a mountain ridge surrounded by miles of untouched forest. Ancient forest. The kind that existed long before roads. Long before settlers. Long before maps. The blue lantern cast strange shadows across the trees as we walked. No insects chirped. No owls called. The woods felt silent in the wrong way. Like everything alive was listening. After 10 minutes, we reached an old stone marker. I had never seen it before. A weathered pillar rose from the ground. Symbols covered its surface. Not letters. Not runes. Something older. Something that made my eyes ache if I looked too long. Warren stopped. "So," he said quietly, "tell me about the dreams." I froze. My pulse accelerated. I hadn't told anyone about the dreams. Not a single person. Every night, since arriving at Station 7, I dreamed about a black door standing in the middle of the forest. Nothing else. Just the door. Each dream brought me closer. Each night I reached a few steps nearer. And every morning I woke terrified. "How do you know about that?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he held the lantern higher. The blue light illuminated the stone marker. For a brief moment, I thought I saw faces moving beneath the rock's surface. Hundreds of faces. Watching. Waiting. Then they disappeared. Warren finally spoke. "Because every ranger receives a summons." The word unsettled me. "Summons from who?" His expression darkened. "That's what Rule 11 is about." Wind stirred through the trees. The temperature dropped instantly. My breath fogged. Something was approaching. I couldn't see it. Couldn't hear it. Yet every instinct in my body knew. Predator. Nearby. Watching. Warren continued. "Most people believe the forest belongs to nature. It doesn't." The words landed with surprising weight. "What does it belong to?" "Someone." The silence afterward felt endless. Then he pointed toward the darkness. Something old lives beneath these mountains. I laughed nervously. Not because it was funny. Because the alternative was worse. You're serious. Completely. A branch cracked somewhere behind us. Both of us turned. Nothing stood there. Yet the pressure remained. Like invisible eyes studying us. Warren lowered his voice. Thousands of years ago, before tribes settled these lands, before kingdoms rose and fell across oceans, something came here. My mouth felt dry. What kind of something? No one knows. That's comforting. I'm not trying to comfort you. Fair point. The old ranger stared into the woods. It created doors. I immediately thought of the dream. The black door. My chest tightened. He noticed. Yes, he said. The same door. The forest suddenly felt much larger. Much older. Much more dangerous. Why am I dreaming about it? Warren's answer came immediately. Because it knows your name. The world seemed to tilt. I wanted to dismiss everything as a prank. A psychological test. Anything rational. But rational explanations don't make shadows move against the direction of moonlight. And they don't explain why the stone marker behind us suddenly emitted a faint humming sound. The noise vibrated through my bones. Warren's face hardened. We're out of time. What does that mean? He turned toward me. For the first time, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. Not concern. Fear. Raw and undeniable. Listen carefully. The humming intensified. The trees began swaying despite the absence of wind. Something massive shifted beneath the ground. The mountain itself trembled. Then Warren spoke the words that would change my life forever. Your Rule 11 is simple. I waited. His voice became barely audible. If you ever reach the black door... The humming stopped. Every sound vanished. The entire forest held its breath. Do not open it. A deep voice echoed from somewhere behind the trees. Not human. Not animal. Ancient. Hungry. And speaking in perfect English. He's already too late. The darkness moved. And something stepped out. The thing that stepped out of the darkness looked human. That was the first lie it told. It wore the shape of a man in the same way a scarecrow wears the shape of a person. The proportions were close enough to fool you from a distance. But every detail felt wrong once you actually looked. Its arms were too long. Its shoulders bent at strange angles. Its smile stretched far beyond where a smile should end. And its eyes looked like open doorways. Not metaphorically. Literally. Black openings that seemed to lead somewhere else. I reached for the pistol on my belt. Warren grabbed my wrist instantly. Don't. The warning came out harsher than I expected. The creature tilted its head. I always enjoy meeting the new ones. Its voice sounded familiar. Not because I recognized it. Because it sounded like dozens of voices speaking at the same time. Male. Female. Young. Old. Human. Something else. All layered together. The effect made my skin crawl. The thing took another step forward. The blue lantern dimmed. The forest around us seemed to lean inward. Watching. Listening. Waiting. You've told him about the door, it said. Warren didn't answer. The creature sighed dramatically. Every generation makes the same mistake. You aren't supposed to be here, Warren replied. Neither is he. The thing's smile widened. It looked directly at me. I disagree. The pressure behind my eyes returned immediately. Suddenly I wasn't standing in the forest anymore. I was somewhere else. A black plain stretched endlessly in every direction. The sky above wasn't a sky. It looked like fractured glass. And standing far away, I saw the door. The same black door from my dreams. Except now it was open. Something stood inside. Watching me. Waiting. Then reality snapped back. I staggered. Blood dripped from my nose. The creature chuckled. Oh yes. Its smile grew wider. You can definitely hear the call. Warren raised the blue lantern. The flames suddenly flared brighter. The creature hissed. For the first time, I saw discomfort on its face. Enough. The old ranger's voice carried unusual authority. The thing studied him for several seconds. Then it stepped backward. The darkness around it deepened. Before disappearing, it looked directly at me one final time. When it spoke, only I heard the words. The door remembers. Then it vanished. Not ran. Not walked away. Vanished. One moment it existed. The next it didn't. Silence returned. I stared into the empty forest. What the hell was that? Warren didn't answer immediately. Instead, he extinguished the blue lantern. The forest instantly felt less hostile. Not safe. Just less aware. Finally he sighed. That was a messenger. I wiped blood from my nose. A messenger for who? The old ranger looked toward the mountains. His expression darkened. That's the question nobody has answered in 600 years. The walk back to Station 7 happened mostly in silence. My mind kept replaying the creature's final words. The door remembers. Not you remember. Not I remember. The door. As if the thing was alive. As if it possessed memory. Intent. Purpose. The possibility bothered me more than I wanted to admit. When we finally reached the station, the lights inside were still on. That immediately felt wrong. It was nearly midnight. Everyone should have been asleep. Instead, every window glowed. Warren noticed too. His expression hardened. Stay close. The station's front door stood open. Another bad sign. The building never remained unlocked after dark. Ever. We entered together. The common room was empty. Coffee sat untouched on the tables. Radios emitted low static. Maps covered the walls. Everything looked normal, which somehow made it worse. Then a voice echoed from upstairs. Chief. Warren immediately moved toward the stairwell. I followed. 3 other rangers waited in the operations room. Each looked nervous. The oldest among them, a woman named Rachel Pierce, held a file folder. She handed it to Warren without speaking. The chief opened it. His face immediately went pale. That terrified me more than any monster. Because Warren didn't scare easily. What happened? He asked. Rachel looked toward me. Then back at Warren. The signal returned. Silence filled the room. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Finally Warren looked at me. Congratulations. I frowned. What? Your assignment arrived. Something about the way he said it made my stomach drop. Rachel handed me the file. Inside were photographs. Dozens of them. The first image showed a forest clearing. The second showed a stone archway. The third. I stopped breathing. It showed the black door. My black door. The exact one from every dream. Standing in the middle of the woods. Real. Physical. Existing. I turned the page. The next photograph contained 3 people. Park surveyors. All smiling. All alive. The final photograph showed the same location 24 hours later. Empty. No bodies. No blood. No tracks. Just absence. Every person gone. Rachel folded her arms. They disappeared yesterday. I stared at the images. Where was this taken? Nobody answered immediately. That silence told me everything. Whatever location appeared in those photographs was bad. Very bad. Finally Warren spoke. Sector 11. The room became even quieter. One ranger muttered a curse. Another looked away. Rachel crossed herself. That reaction raised immediate alarms. What is Sector 11? Warren closed the folder. The reason Rule 11 exists. The mountains seemed colder suddenly. Outside, wind rattled against the windows. I looked around the room. Every ranger appeared uncomfortable. Experienced people. Veterans. People who had survived things most humans couldn't imagine. And all of them looked afraid. Not nervous. Afraid. Rachel finally broke the silence. No ranger has entered Sector 11 in 18 years. Why? Nobody answered. Warren opened a cabinet near the wall. Inside sat equipment unlike anything I'd seen before. Ancient-looking weapons. Silver tools. Strange lanterns. Objects marked with symbols matching those on the stone pillar. He removed a weathered journal. Then handed it to me. The cover contained a name. Elias Carter. I recognized it immediately. My predecessor. The ranger whose cabin remained abandoned. The ranger nobody talked about. What happened to him? Warren looked directly into my eyes. He opened the door. The room became silent again. Nobody needed to explain further. The expression on Warren's face told me everything. Whatever happened after Elias opened that door. He never truly came back. Rachel slid another photograph across the table. This one showed a satellite image. A massive region deep within the mountains. Forests. Valleys. Ancient ridges. At the center sat a dark circular area. Almost like a wound. A scar upon the landscape. Someone had written a single warning across the image in red ink. Do not enter alone. I stared at the words. Then at the black circle. Then at the photograph of the door. The dream door. The impossible door. The door that somehow knew my name. And for the first time, a realization struck me. The dreams hadn't been warnings. They had been directions. Something wasn't trying to keep me away. Something was trying to guide me there. Warren must have seen the realization appear on my face. Because his expression became grim. Now you understand. No. My voice sounded weaker than I intended. I don't. Good. He looked toward the mountains outside. Because if you fully understood. The chief ranger paused. Fear flickered behind his eyes again. You'd already be running. Then every radio inside Station 7 activated simultaneously. Static exploded from dozens of speakers. The noise filled the building. Everyone froze. A voice emerged through the interference. Broken. Distorted. Barely human. But still understandable. The message repeated over and over. Sector 11 breach confirmed. Static. Sector 11 breach confirmed. Static. Then one final transmission. A voice that sounded suspiciously like my own. Don't let me open the door. The radios went silent. And every person in the room slowly turned to look at me. Nobody spoke for several seconds after the radios went silent. The room felt frozen. Every ranger stared at me. Not with suspicion. Not exactly. It was something worse. Recognition. Like they'd just witnessed a piece of a puzzle falling into place. I hated that look. Because it meant they knew something I didn't. Rachel was the first to move. She walked to the nearest radio and unplugged it from the wall. The others followed immediately. Within seconds, every radio in the operations room had been disconnected. Nobody wanted to hear another message. Especially not one delivered in my voice. Warren rubbed his temples. How many stations received that transmission? Rachel checked a terminal. All of them. The answer landed heavily. Every station in the network? She nodded. Every station. A curse slipped from Warren's mouth. That got my attention. I'd never heard the old ranger swear before. I stepped forward. Somebody explain what's happening. No one answered. The silence stretched. Then Warren looked at me. Have you ever heard of an echo? I've heard the word. Not the kind we're talking about. He walked toward a map hanging on the wall. The map covered most of Appalachia. Hundreds of markers dotted the wilderness. Some green. Some yellow. Some red. A handful were black. The black markers immediately drew my attention. Warren pointed at one. Sector 11. Deep in the mountains. Far beyond normal patrol territory. An echo is a possibility. I frowned. That doesn't mean anything. It means a future version of someone. The room became quiet again. I stared at him, waiting for a joke. None came. Rachel folded her arms. Sometimes places like Sector 11 create fractures. What kind of fractures? The kind that shouldn't exist. The answer wasn't helpful. Warren noticed my frustration. Think of reality as a river. I nodded. Most of the time the river flows in one direction. Okay. But occasionally something punches a hole through the river. He tapped the map. Sector 11 is one of those holes. I looked at the location again. The black marker suddenly felt much more threatening. You think that transmission came from my future? No. The answer surprised me. Warren's expression darkened. I think it came from a future that failed. That was somehow worse. The room fell silent again. Then Rachel closed the file. We're wasting time. She looked directly at Warren. The breach happened yesterday. I know. If the door is active. I know. The tension between them felt obvious. Whatever was happening, it was moving fast. Too fast. Finally, Warren sighed. Then he made a decision. Prepare a field team. The room immediately came alive. Rangers moved toward equipment lockers. Maps appeared. Weapons were checked. Emergency kits were assembled. Everyone suddenly had a job. Everyone except me. I stood there watching, trying to understand how my life had become insane in less than 24 hours. Warren approached carrying a long wooden case. The case looked ancient. Dark oak reinforced with iron bands. Symbols covered the lid. The same symbols I'd seen on the stone marker. He handed it to me. Open it. The hinges creaked. Inside rested a rifle. Not modern. Not old. Something in between. The metal carried strange engravings. Silver lines ran across the barrel. The stock appeared carved from black wood. The weapon felt unusually heavy when I lifted it. What is this? Warren smiled faintly. The reason some rangers survive. I examined the rifle. What does it shoot? Depends what you're aiming at. That wasn't an answer. Apparently nobody cared. Within 20 minutes the team was assembled. 5 people. Warren. Rachel. A tracker named Owen. A communications specialist named Diaz. And me. The newest ranger in the station. The one having dreams about impossible doors. The one receiving messages from alternate futures. I suddenly felt underqualified. Outside, dawn still hadn't arrived. The mountains remained wrapped in darkness. Our convoy consisted of 2 modified trucks. The vehicles looked military. Reinforced frames. Heavy suspension. Equipment racks covering the roofs. Definitely not standard Park Service transportation. I climbed into the passenger seat beside Warren. The engine roared to life. Then we began moving. The road out of Station 7 wound through miles of dense wilderness. At first the journey felt normal. Then the signs started appearing. Old signs. Weathered signs. Warning signs. The first read. Turn back. The second appeared 20 minutes later. No path returns the same. The third stood beside a cliffside curve. Do not trust reflections. I pointed toward it. Those signs aren't official. No. Who put them there? Warren kept his eyes on the road. People who survived. That answer lingered in my mind. The further we traveled, the stranger things became. Trees grew larger. Older. Twisted. The forest looked ancient enough to remember civilizations. Sunrise should have arrived by then. Yet darkness remained. A permanent twilight seemed to cover the mountains. Even the air felt different. Heavier. Older. Eventually we reached a rusted gate. Massive chains wrapped around it. Ancient symbols covered the metal. The gate stretched across the entire road. A barrier. A warning. A prison wall. Rachel exited the second truck. She approached carrying a ring of keys. The keys themselves looked bizarre. Black metal. Unfamiliar shapes. Nothing about them appeared modern. After several attempts, she unlocked the chains. The gates slowly opened. The sound echoed through the mountains. Deep, metallic, unpleasant, like awakening something sleeping nearby. Nobody spoke as we drove through. The moment the trucks crossed the threshold, my ears began ringing. A low vibration spread through my skull. The sensation felt familiar. Very familiar. I recognized it instantly. The dreams. This was the same feeling. The same pressure. The same invisible pull. Something inside Sector 11 knew I had arrived. An hour later we reached the edge of the survey site. The missing team's camp still stood. Tents remained intact. Equipment sat untouched. Vehicles rested exactly where they had been parked. The scene looked frozen in time, as if everyone had simply vanished. Which, according to the reports, they had. We exited the trucks cautiously. Weapons ready. Eyes scanning the tree line. The forest surrounding the camp felt wrong. Too quiet. No birds. No insects. Nothing. Just silence. The oppressive kind. The kind that makes you feel watched. Owen knelt near a tent. He studied the ground carefully. Then his face tightened. Tracks. Everyone turned. What kind? Owen looked uncomfortable. Human. That sounded promising. Until he continued. Hundreds of them. A chill moved through me. Where do they lead? He pointed toward the forest. Toward a narrow path disappearing between the trees. The same direction. Rachel frowned. All of them? Owen nodded. Every single one. Nobody needed to ask where the trail ended. We already knew. The black door. The path wound deeper into the woods. And every instinct I possessed told me the same thing. The missing surveyors hadn't been taken. They had walked willingly. Something had called them. Something they couldn't resist. The same thing calling me. Then I noticed something attached to a nearby tree. A photograph. Fresh. Recently placed. I approached carefully. The image showed 5 people standing in front of the black door. Warren, Rachel, Owen, Diaz, and me. The problem was simple. The photograph had clearly been taken already. Yet none of us had ever stood there. At least not yet. Written across the bottom were 6 words. One of you opens it. Silence fell across the camp. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then a sudden gust of wind swept through the clearing. The photograph slipped from my fingers. The forest answered with distant laughter. Not close. Not human. And not alone. Hundreds of voices echoed somewhere beyond the trees. Waiting. Watching. Expecting us. Sector 11 knew we were here. And it seemed very happy about it. Nobody laughed after hearing the voices in the forest. Nobody made jokes. Nobody pretended the photograph was some elaborate prank. Because every ranger on the team knew the same thing. Sector 11 didn't predict the future. It infected it. Warren burned the photograph immediately. He struck a match, held the corner of the image to the flame, and watched until nothing remained except black ash. Even then, he looked uneasy. Move out, he ordered. No one argued. The trail left by the missing surveyors led directly into the trees. Hundreds of footprints covered the ground. Men, women, different shoe sizes, different walking patterns. Yet every track pointed in the same direction. No hesitation. No signs of struggle. Just a procession. Like worshippers walking toward a shrine. The deeper we went, the older the forest became. Trees wider than houses surrounded us. Roots rose from the earth like the ribs of buried giants. Some trunks carried symbols carved into the bark. The same symbols I'd seen on the stone marker outside Station 7. Only these looked newer. Fresh. Recently cut. I stopped beside one. The carving resembled a door. A simple black rectangle. Nothing more. Yet staring at it made my stomach tighten. Rachel noticed. Don't focus on them too long. I stepped away immediately. Why? Because they focus back. That answer bothered me more than I wanted to admit. We continued. An hour passed. Then another. The trail never changed direction. Always forward. Always deeper. Eventually Owen raised a hand. Everyone stopped. The tracker crouched beside a patch of disturbed soil. His expression hardened. "What is it?" Warren asked. Owen didn't answer right away. Instead, he brushed dirt aside. The object beneath made my blood run cold. A human hand. Detached. Partially buried. Yet somehow perfectly preserved. Diaz swore under his breath. I knelt beside it. There was almost no blood. No signs of violence. No indication how it had ended up there. Then I noticed something strange. The fingers were clenched around a folded piece of paper. Rachel carefully removed it. The note contained only one sentence. "He is under the door." Silence settled over the group. Warren took the paper. Read it twice. Then folded it and placed it inside his jacket. "Keep moving." Nobody questioned him. But I could see concern spreading through the team. Because none of us knew who he was. And somehow that uncertainty felt worse than knowing. The forest grew darker as afternoon approached. Not naturally darker. Wrong darker. The kind of darkness that doesn't belong to the time of day. Our flashlights became necessary. Even then, visibility remained poor. At one point I glanced between two trees and saw a distant light. A cabin. Small. Weathered. Standing alone. I blinked. The cabin disappeared. Gone. Like it had never existed. I said nothing. Because judging by the expressions around me, I wasn't the only one seeing things. Then the radio on Diaz's shoulder crackled. Everyone froze. The radios were supposed to remain silent inside Sector 11. That wasn't a rule. That was reality. Signals didn't work here. Except now one did. Static hissed. A voice emerged. Weak. Broken. Desperate. "Please." Diaz slowly lifted the radio. "Who is this?" The answer came immediately. "Please don't leave me here." The voice belonged to a man. Terrified. Crying. I saw Warren's face pale instantly. "Turn it off." Diaz hesitated. The voice continued. "I can hear it moving." Static. "It's underneath me." Static. "Please send help." My stomach dropped. "Who is that?" Nobody answered. The transmission returned. This time clearer. "Station 7, please respond." Then came a name. Elias Carter requesting immediate evacuation. Every ranger stopped breathing. Because Elias Carter had disappeared 18 years ago. The radio crackled again. "Elias Carter requesting immediate evacuation." The voice sounded real. Human. Alive. Then screaming erupted through the speaker. Raw panic. The sound of a man witnessing something impossible. The transmission ended abruptly. Static filled the silence. Then nothing. Diaz lowered the radio. Nobody spoke. Finally I turned toward Warren. "My predecessor?" The old ranger nodded. "What if he's still alive?" "No." The answer came too quickly. Too firmly. "But we heard him." Warren's jaw tightened. "No." The certainty in his voice bothered me. Because it sounded like a man trying to convince himself. Not me. The trail eventually led us into a clearing. The moment we entered, everyone stopped. At the center stood a massive stone circle. Ancient monoliths rose from the earth. Each covered with symbols. Each weathered by unimaginable time. The stones formed a perfect ring nearly 100 feet across. And inside the circle, hundreds of skeletons. Human skeletons. Some ancient. Some modern. All arranged in orderly rows. Facing the same direction. Facing the center. The sight stole my breath. The bones weren't scattered. They weren't piled. They looked deliberate. Organized. Like an audience. waiting for a performance, or a ceremony, or a judgment. Rachel slowly walked forward. Her face had gone pale. Impossible. What? I asked. She pointed toward one skeleton near the edge. Unlike the others, it wore clothing. Modern clothing. A ranger uniform. The badge remained visible. I moved closer. The name tag still clung to the shirt. Elias Carter. The world seemed to tilt. My predecessor. Dead. Definitely dead. The skeleton settled at least 18 years old. No possibility of survival. No possibility of rescue. Which meant the voice on the radio had been something else. Something pretending. Something listening. A chill crawled down my spine. Then Owen called out from the opposite side of the circle. Guys. His voice sounded strained. Concerned. Everyone turned. The tracker stood near the center. Staring downward. I approached. The others followed. At first I couldn't understand what I was seeing. Then realization hit. The center of the stone circle wasn't solid ground. It was a lid. A gigantic circular stone lid. Dozens of chains stretched across its surface. Each chain as thick as my arm. Ancient symbols covered every inch. Warnings. Seals. Prisons. I didn't know which. But I understood their purpose immediately. They were holding something shut. Warren looked sick. Dear God. The chains weren't intact. Several had snapped. Massive iron links lay scattered across the stone. Broken from below. Not above. From below. As if something imprisoned beneath the circle had started pulling its way out. Then we heard it. A sound. Faint. Distant. Coming from underneath the sealed stone. A heartbeat. Slow. Massive. Impossible. Boom. The ground vibrated. Boom. Several birds exploded from the treetops. Boom. The chains rattled. Every ranger stepped backward instinctively. Because whatever existed beneath that lid, it was alive. And waking up. Then I noticed writing carved into the center of the stone. Unlike the ancient symbols, these words were written in English. Modern. Desperate. As though someone had carved them recently. I knelt and brushed dirt away. The message became visible. My blood turned to ice. Because I recognized the handwriting. It matched the journal Warren had shown me. Elias Carter's handwriting. The words read, "The door is not a prison. It is a lock." Silence consumed the clearing. The heartbeat below echoed once more. Boom. 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 Then something struck the underside of the stone lid. Hard. The entire circle shook. Dust erupted from the chains. And somewhere deep beneath the earth, a voice whispered my name. Not through the air. Not through sound. Directly inside my head. Waiting. Patient. Ancient. As if it had been expecting me all along. The voice beneath the stone knew my name. Not my title. Not Ranger. Not some nickname. My actual name. The one my mother had given me. The one spoken over birthday cakes, graduation ceremonies, and funerals. Hearing it emerge from something buried beneath an ancient mountain felt deeply wrong. Like discovering a stranger knew every secret you'd ever hidden. I staggered backward. The pressure inside my skull intensified. For a brief moment, I saw the black door again. Not physically. Mentally. A flash. A glimpse. The door standing in darkness. Waiting. Then the vision vanished. "Move away from the seal," Warren barked. Nobody needed convincing. We retreated from the stone circle immediately. The heartbeat below continued. Slow. Steady. Patient. Boom. 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 Like something enormous conserving its strength. Watching. Waiting for the right moment. Rachel glanced toward the broken chains. "There are more fractures." Warren nodded grimly. "How many?" "No idea." That answer worried everyone. Because if one seal had begun failing, Others might be failing too. And none of us knew how many existed beneath the mountains, or what they contained. The chief ranger studied the clearing. Then he made a decision. We find the survey team. I looked at the rows of skeletons surrounding us. Assuming they're still alive. Nobody answered. The silence was answer enough. The odds weren't good. Still, we had to try. That's what rangers did. Even in places where normal rules stopped applying. We left the stone circle and continued following the trail. The footprints remained visible. Hundreds of them. All moving deeper into Sector 11. Toward the heart of whatever nightmare existed here. The forest changed again as we traveled. The trees grew farther apart. The ground became covered in pale gray moss. No plants. No flowers. No signs of wildlife. Just endless carpets of gray. At one point Owen crouched to inspect it. Then immediately stood back up. What? He looked unsettled. It's not moss. I frowned. What is it? The tracker swallowed. Hair. Nobody spoke. I looked down at the ground. Suddenly the landscape felt much worse. Miles of pale strands covered the forest floor. Human hair. Or something close enough to human hair. The realization made my skin crawl. We moved faster after that. Nobody wanted to linger. Then Diaz stopped suddenly. Wait. His voice sounded tense. He pointed ahead. At first I saw nothing. Then movement appeared between the trees. People. Standing silently among the trunks. Dozens of them. The missing survey team. My pulse jumped. We found them. But nobody celebrated. Because something was wrong. Very wrong. The surveyors weren't moving. They weren't speaking. They simply stood there. Motionless. Facing away from us. Like mannequins. Or statues. Rachel raised her rifle. Stay alert. We approached cautiously. The figures remained still. 10 feet away. Then 5. Finally I reached the nearest surveyor. A middle-aged woman from the photographs. I touched her shoulder. She immediately collapsed. The body hit the ground with a dry cracking sound. Several others fell as well. Not dead. Not exactly. Empty. Their skin remained. Their clothing remained. But whatever existed inside was gone. The bodies resembled hollow shells. Like something had carefully removed every organ. Every bone. Every drop of blood. Leaving only a human outline behind. Diaz nearly vomited. Owen backed away. I stared in disbelief. There should have been gore. There should have been evidence. Instead there was only absence. As though reality itself had scooped the people out. Warren knelt beside one of the bodies. Then his face darkened. What is it? Rachel asked. The chief ranger held up a small object. A key. Black metal. Identical to the keys used on the gate entering Sector 11. Except this one carried a symbol engraved on its surface. A door. The same symbol appeared on another shell. And another. And another. Each empty body clutched a black key. Like tokens. Invitations. Or rewards. A chill moved through me. Then I noticed something tucked into one surveyor's pocket. A notebook. I opened it. The final entries had been written hastily. The handwriting grew more frantic with each page. Day 3. We found the structure. It shouldn't exist. Day 4. The dreams have started. Everyone hears the same voice. Day 5. The door isn't abandoned. Something answers when we knock. Day 6. We opened. The sentence ended there. Nothing else followed. The remaining pages were blank. Warren closed the notebook. We're close. Nobody asked how he knew. The answer felt obvious. Whatever had happened to the survey team happened near the door. And we were already finding the aftermath. The trail eventually led toward a narrow ravine. Massive cliffs rose on both sides. Ancient stone walls covered in strange carvings. The deeper we traveled, the more symbols appeared. Thousands of them. Some looked ancient. Others looked fresh. Recently carved. As if generations had left warnings for those who came after. One message appeared repeatedly. Do not listen. Another. It wears your memories. And another. The first voice is never its real voice. Every warning made my stomach sink further. Because I had already heard voices. Several of them. The messenger. The radio. The thing beneath the seal. How many had been lies? How many had been bait? The ravine eventually opened into a valley. The sight waiting there stopped us cold. An entire village stood in the center. Wooden houses. Stone wells. Fences. Roads. Everything looked abandoned. Yet perfectly preserved. The architecture appeared centuries old. No modern materials. No signs of electricity. No signs of recent life. Just an impossible settlement hidden deep within the mountains. Rachel whispered. This wasn't on any map. It wouldn't be, Warren replied. The chief's voice sounded grim. Because it shouldn't exist anymore. We entered carefully. The village remained silent. Doors stood open. Tables remained set. Tools rested where people had left them. The entire place felt frozen in time, as though every resident had vanished simultaneously. Then I noticed the statues. Dozens of them lined the streets. Human figures carved from black stone. Men, women, children, each facing the same direction. Toward a hill rising above the village. Towards something hidden beyond our view. The expressions on the statues disturbed me most. Fear. Not panic. Not terror. Recognition. Like they had seen something they understood far too late. Owen approached one statue. Then immediately stepped backward. Guys. His voice sounded shaky. We joined him. The tracker pointed toward the stone figure's face. I leaned closer. My blood froze. Because it wasn't a statue. It had once been a real person. The skin. The features. The details. Everything remained perfectly preserved beneath a layer of black mineral growth. The villagers hadn't carved statues. They had become them. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. All facing the hill. All trapped in the exact moment they realized what was happening. Then the church bell rang. A loud metallic clang echoed across the valley. Every ranger jumped. The sound came from the far side of the village. From a church standing atop the hill. The bell rang again. Then again. Slow. Deliberate. Calling. Inviting. And as the echoes faded, we finally saw it. Standing beside the church. Visible above the rooftops. The black door. Larger than in my dreams. Older than anything around it. Its surface seemed to absorb light itself. And although it stood nearly half a mile away, I knew with absolute certainty that something on the other side had just noticed us. The door had been waiting, and now it knew we had arrived. The church bell rang a fourth time. Then silence returned. No wind. No birds. No movement. Just the black door standing atop the hill like a wound cut into reality. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Every member of the team stared at it. The thing looked wrong in ways my brain struggled to process. It wasn't especially large. Maybe 12 feet tall. 8 feet wide. Simple. Featureless. Yet the longer I looked at it, the more impossible it seemed. The door wasn't merely standing on the hill. It felt connected to everything around it. The village. The forest. The mountains. The seals. The dreams. Like invisible threads stretched outward from the black surface into the entire region. And somehow into me. I felt it. A pull. Subtle but undeniable. The sensation reminded me of standing near a powerful magnet. Something was drawing me closer. Warren noticed immediately. Eyes off the door. I forced myself to look away. The pressure eased. Not completely. But enough. Rachel scanned the village through binoculars. Movement. Every ranger became alert. Where? She pointed toward the church. Near the steps. A figure stood motionless, watching us. Human-shaped. Too far away to identify. The figure didn't wave. Didn't move. Didn't react. It simply stood there. Waiting. Owen raised his rifle. Friend or enemy? Warren shook his head. Neither. The answer wasn't comforting. We moved through the village cautiously. The empty streets amplified every footstep. Doors creaked softly despite the absence of wind. At one point I noticed children's toys abandoned beside a house. Wooden animals. Handmade dolls. Tiny carved figures. One doll immediately caught my attention. Its face had been painted black. Its body shaped like a door. I looked away. The entire village felt infected by the same obsession. Door symbols appeared everywhere. On fences. On rooftops. On wells. On walls. Someone had spent generations preparing for something. Or worshipping something. Neither possibility felt good. As we approached the church, details became clearer. The building was ancient. Far older than it should have been. Parts of the architecture resembled colonial-era construction. Other sections looked medieval. Some looked older than recorded history. As if the structure had been rebuilt repeatedly across centuries. Layer upon layer. Generation after generation. Always around the same location. Always facing the black door. Then we finally saw the figure standing outside. My pulse immediately spiked. Because I recognized him. The man wore a ranger uniform. Old. Weathered. Faded by time. A familiar name tag rested on his chest. Elias Carter. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The ranger standing before us should have been dead. We had found his skeleton. We had seen the remains. Yet here he stood. Alive. Breathing. Watching. The impossible reality froze everyone. Finally Warren stepped forward. Elias. The figure smiled. Relief flooded his face. For a moment he looked completely normal. Completely human. Chief. My stomach tightened. The voice matched the radio transmission perfectly. Elias Carter descended the church steps slowly. He appeared older than his photographs. Aged. Exhausted. But alive. Somehow alive. Rachel raised her weapon. Stay back. Elias stopped immediately. His smile faded. I understand. Nobody lowered their weapons. Not even Warren. That told me everything. No one trusted what they were seeing. You're dead, Rachel said. Elias laughed softly. I know. The answer sent a chill through the group. The former ranger looked toward me. His expression changed instantly. Recognition. Fear. Pity. A strange combination. So you're the new one? I didn't answer. He nodded anyway. The dream started already. Not a question. A statement. I felt my stomach drop. How do you know? His smile disappeared completely. Because they started for me too. Silence followed. Then Warren asked the question everyone wanted answered. What happened here? Elias looked toward the black door. The fear in his eyes became obvious. Raw. Genuine. The kind of fear that survives decades. We were wrong. Nobody interrupted. We thought the door was a prison. His voice shook. We thought something terrible was locked behind it. The former ranger swallowed. That's not true. The wind finally returned. Cold air swept across the hill. The church bell moved slightly. A low metallic groan echoed through the valley. Elias continued. The thing behind the door isn't the prisoner. My pulse accelerated. I remembered the message carved into the stone seal. The door is not a prison. It is a lock. Suddenly the meaning felt much worse. Elias pointed toward the mountains surrounding us. The prisoner is beneath everything. Nobody spoke. Because we were all thinking the same thing. The seal. The chains. The heartbeat. The thing beneath the mountain. Elias nodded. as if hearing our thoughts. The ancient tribes knew. His gaze drifted toward the village. They built the first seals, toward the church. The first guardians, toward the black door. The first lock. A realization slowly formed in my mind. The door keeps something trapped. Yes. My mouth felt dry. What? Elias looked genuinely horrified. Not frightened. Horrified. The distinction mattered. Because horror comes from understanding. And whatever Elias understood had broken him. Finally he answered. Nobody remembers its real name. The former ranger stared toward the horizon. But every culture left pieces behind. His voice lowered. The devourer. A distant rumble echoed beneath the earth. The mountains seemed to shift. Listening, Elias continued. The eater of roads. Another rumble. The empty king. The church bell trembled. The one beneath. The ground vibrated. Boom. A heartbeat. The same heartbeat from the seal. Only stronger. Closer. Elias closed his eyes. And the oldest name. Nobody breathed. The end of doors. Silence swallowed the valley. Then something happened. The black door moved. Not opened. Moved. The surface rippled slightly. Like liquid darkness. Every ranger immediately raised their weapon. Elias looked terrified. Don't look directly at it. Too late. I had already seen it. And the moment I did, reality fractured. The village vanished. The church vanished. The team vanished. Everything vanished. I stood alone before the black door. Darkness surrounded me. Infinite darkness. The door slowly opened. Not wide. Just enough. A narrow crack. A sliver. And through that opening I saw an eye. One enormous eye. Larger than cities. Older than mountains. Watching from somewhere impossibly far away. The moment it looked at me, memories flooded my mind. Not mine. Ancient memories. I saw civilizations burning. Continents drowning. Stars collapsing. Entire worlds disappearing into darkness. And beneath every catastrophe stood the same colossal silhouette. Waiting. Feeding. Growing. The devourer. Then the vision shattered. Reality returned instantly. I collapsed to one knee. Blood poured from my nose. The others looked shaken too. Except Elias. He looked resigned. Like a man watching history repeat itself. Warren helped me stand. What did you see? Before I could answer, Elias spoke. It showed him. The former ranger's face went pale. Didn't it? I couldn't lie. I nodded. Elias closed his eyes. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then he looked directly at me. And asked the question that changed everything. When you saw it. His voice trembled. Did it recognize you? The terror in his expression told me the answer mattered. Unfortunately, I already knew the truth. Because during the vision, the eye hadn't merely looked at me. It had smiled. And for one impossible moment, I had the horrifying certainty that the thing behind the door knew exactly who I was. Worse, it had known me long before I was born. The moment I admitted that the thing behind the door had recognized me, the atmosphere changed. Not dramatically, not visibly, but every ranger on the hill felt it. A shift, a realization, the kind that arrives when a theory stops being a theory. Elias looked away first. That frightened me more than anything else. Because until that moment, he had been the person who understood this place better than anyone. And now even he seemed afraid to look at me. The church bell groaned softly overhead. The black door remained motionless. Yet I could still feel it. Watching. Listening. Waiting. Warren finally broke the silence. We need answers. Elias laughed bitterly. Then you've come to the wrong place. The former ranger looked exhausted. Like a man carrying 18 years of impossible knowledge. You don't get answers here. His gaze drifted toward the door. You get pieces. Then give us the pieces. Elias hesitated. For a moment, I thought he might refuse. Instead, he nodded. The first thing you need to understand is that the dreams aren't random. I wasn't surprised. Part of me had already suspected that. They're invitations. The words landed heavily. Rachel frowned. Invitations to what? Elias looked toward the door. The fear returned immediately. To become a keeper. Nobody spoke. The term meant nothing to me. But judging by Warren's expression, it meant something to him. Something bad. The keepers were the first guardians. Elias continued. Thousands of years ago, they built the locks. The door? All of them. That caught my attention. All of them? The former ranger nodded. There isn't just one. A chill moved through the group. The black door isn't unique. He pointed toward the mountains. There are others. The world suddenly felt much larger. And much more dangerous. How many? Elias laughed humorlessly. No one knows. That answer bothered me. Because if there were multiple doors, then there might be multiple things imprisoned beneath reality. Or worse, multiple ways for something to escape. Before anyone could ask another question, Owen suddenly froze. His eyes narrowed. What? The tracker slowly raised a finger. Listen. Everyone became silent. At first I heard nothing. Then I caught it. Footsteps. Coming from the village. Slow. Deliberate. Numerous. The sound echoed between the empty buildings. One set. Then another. Then dozens. Rachel immediately raised her rifle. The rest of us followed. The village streets remained empty. Yet the footsteps continued. Growing closer. 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 Then figures began emerging from the houses. My stomach dropped. Villagers. Hundreds of them. Men. Women. Children. The same people who had supposedly become stone. Only now they were moving. Walking. Watching. Their skin looked gray. Their eyes completely black. No pupils. No whites. Just darkness. The villagers filled the streets. Silent. Expressionless. Standing shoulder to shoulder. Blocking every path back down the hill. Diaz swore. That's not normal. No one bothered answering. Of course it wasn't normal. One little girl stepped forward. She couldn't have been older than 8. Her dress looked centuries old. Her face appeared peaceful. Then she smiled. The smile stretched too wide. Far too wide. Exactly like the messenger. Elias immediately stepped backward. No. His voice cracked. No, no, no. The little girl tilted her head. Then spoke. Dozens of voices emerged simultaneously. Male. Female. Young. Old. All speaking through her mouth. The keeper returns. The villagers repeated it. Every single one. The keeper returns. The sound rolled across the valley. Like a chant. Like a prayer. Like a verdict. My pulse hammered. The little girl's black eyes locked onto mine. We've waited so long. Then every villager took a step forward. At the same time, the ground trembled beneath hundreds of synchronized footsteps. Warren didn't hesitate. Move! The team retreated toward the church. The villagers advanced. Slowly. Patiently. Never running. Never rushing. As if they already knew escape was impossible. We reached the church doors. Elias shoved them open. Inside. Nobody argued. The team rushed into the ancient building. The heavy doors slammed shut behind us. For a brief moment, silence returned. Then hundreds of hands struck the exterior simultaneously. Boom. The entire church shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. Another impact followed. Boom. The stained glass windows rattled violently. Rachel stared at the entrance. How long will those doors hold? Elias looked grim. Not long. That wasn't reassuring. The church interior felt ancient. Candles lined the walls. Old wooden pews stretched across the room. Strange symbols covered nearly every surface. And at the center stood an enormous stone altar. The altar immediately caught my attention, because something rested on top of it. A book. Massive. Bound in black leather. Covered with the same symbols found throughout Sector 11. Elias noticed me staring. The Chronicle. The what? The record. His expression darkened. Every keeper wrote inside it. The impacts against the church continued. Boom. 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 The villagers were getting stronger. The old structure wouldn't survive forever. Warren approached the altar, then opened the book. Ancient pages filled with countless entries appeared. Different languages. Different handwriting. Thousands of years of records. Warnings. Histories. Names. The chief quickly turned pages. Searching. Looking for something specific. Then he stopped. A particular page had been marked. Recently. Elias's handwriting covered the paper. The final entry. The last thing he had written before disappearing. Warren read silently. His face went pale. Rachel noticed immediately. What? He didn't answer. Instead, he handed the book to me. I looked down. The message was short. Only 3 lines. But it changed everything. The devourer cannot escape. The lock is working. The real danger is who controls the key. My stomach tightened. The black keys. The surveyors. The dreams. The invitations. Suddenly everything felt connected. Then I noticed another line beneath the message. Written hastily. Desperately. As if Elias had added it at the last possible second. And the moment I read it, the blood drained from my face. Because the sentence contained my name. Not a title. Not a description. My exact name. Written 18 years before I arrived. The entry read, "When he comes, do not let him take the key." Silence filled the church. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Then the first crack appeared. The front doors splintered. Wood shattered inward. The villagers were breaking through. Elias looked terrified. Not of the creatures outside. Of something else. Something worse. His eyes locked onto me. Then he whispered the words I never wanted to hear. "I don't think the warning was about the devourer." The second impact hit. The doors exploded inward. Hundreds of black-eyed villagers flooded into the church. And among them walked the messenger. Smiling. Waiting. As though this had all happened exactly according to plan. The church doors exploded inward. Wooden fragments flew across the sanctuary. Ancient pews shattered. Candles toppled. Dust filled the air. And through the wreckage walked the messenger. Calm. Smiling. Patient. The villagers followed behind it in complete silence. Hundreds of black-eyed figures poured into the church. Yet none of them rushed us. None attacked. They simply spread throughout the building, surrounding us, closing every exit. Like spectators gathering around a stage. The messenger stepped over the broken doorway. Its smile widened. At last. Every voice inside its throat spoke together. The sound vibrated through my chest. The circle closes. Warren fired first. The rifle thundered. The silver round struck the messenger directly between the eyes. For a split second, the creature's head exploded into black mist. Then the mist folded backward, reforming, rebuilding, repairing itself instantly. The messenger blinked, almost amused. That never works. Rachel opened fire next. Then Diaz. Then Owen. The church erupted with gunfire. Silver rounds tore through villagers and shattered stained glass. Some creatures collapsed. Others simply stood back up. The messenger remained untouched. Smiling. Always smiling. Then it raised one hand. Every weapon in the room suddenly jammed. At the same moment, metal groaned. Bolts locked. Triggers froze. An impossible silence followed. The messenger laughed. You still believe this is a fight? The villagers took another synchronized step forward. The church floor trembled. Elias moved immediately. To the crypt. Warren didn't hesitate. Move! We sprinted toward a side chamber behind the altar. The villagers advanced. The messenger followed. Never running. Never hurrying. Like something that already knew the ending. Elias shoved aside a stone slab hidden beneath a carpet. A staircase descended into darkness. The smell rising from below was ancient. Dust. Stone. Age. Secrets. We dropped into the passage. Elias slammed the stone shut above us. The noise of the villagers became muffled. Not gone. Just distant. The narrow staircase spiraled deep beneath the church. Far deeper than the structure should have allowed. The deeper we descended, the colder the air became. Blue symbols glowed faintly along the walls. The same symbols from the seals. The same symbols from the gate. The same symbols from the chronicle. Protection. Containment. Warnings. All built by people terrified of something. After nearly 10 minutes of descending, the staircase ended. The chamber below stole my breath. An underground city stretched before us. Massive stone corridors. Ancient bridges. Ruined towers. Entire streets buried beneath the mountain. The place looked impossibly old. Older than the village. Older than recorded history. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above. A hidden civilization. Lost beneath Appalachia. No way. Diaz stared upward. What is this place? Elias looked exhausted. The First Kingdom. Nobody spoke. The name itself felt heavy. Ancient. Important. Forgotten. The first keepers lived here. His voice echoed softly through the cavern. They built the locks. My eyes drifted across the ruins. Thousands of years of history lay buried beneath the mountain. An entire civilization erased from human memory. And somehow all of it existed because of the door. Or what the door contained. Warren scanned the city carefully. Where's the key? The question surprised me. Not because he asked it. Because Elias looked genuinely afraid to answer. Finally he pointed toward the distant center of the underground city. A black tower rose from the ruins. Unlike everything else, the tower appeared untouched by time. Perfect. Smooth. Featureless. A vertical scar piercing the darkness. There. The word barely escaped his mouth. Every instinct I possessed immediately hated the tower. Something about it felt wrong. Like the door. Like the messenger. Like the eye behind reality. The feeling intensified as I stared. Then a sound echoed through the cavern. A bell. The church bell. Impossible. We were miles underground. Yet the bell continued ringing. Slow. Deliberate. Calling. The messenger had followed us. Elias heard it too. His face went white. We need to hurry. We crossed the ruined city as quickly as possible. Ancient streets stretched endlessly around us. Statues lined the roads. Thousands of them. Unlike the villagers above, these statues looked deliberate. Heroes. Kings. Warriors. Guardians. All facing the black tower. All kneeling. As if honoring something. Or surrendering to it. The distinction bothered me. Then we found the first body. A skeleton. Ancient. Thousands of years old. Still clutching a sword. The skeleton pointed toward the tower. Not accidentally. Intentionally. Like a final warning. Or a final direction. Then another skeleton appeared. Then another. Then hundreds. The remains of an entire army. Every warrior facing the tower. Every weapon drawn. Every skeleton collapsed where it had made its last stand. A battlefield. The final battlefield. And judging by the evidence, they had lost. Owen stopped beside one skeleton. Something lay beneath the bones. A metal plate. Covered with writing. Rachel brushed dirt away. Ancient symbols filled most of the surface. Only one line appeared in English. A translation added later. The message chilled me. We locked him below. We locked them above. We failed both. Nobody spoke. The implication was obvious. There wasn't only one threat. The devourer below. Something else above. The door. The messenger. The keepers. Pieces of a much larger puzzle. And we still couldn't see the full picture. Then the ringing bell stopped. Silence returned. For 3 seconds. 4. 5. Then a scream echoed through the underground city. Not human. Not animal. Ancient. The sound shook the cavern itself. Stone cracked. Dust fell from the ceiling. Far away, something massive moved beneath the earth. The heartbeat returned. Boom. The ruins trembled. Boom. Statues fractured. Boom. The black tower vibrated. Whatever lay beneath the mountain was no longer sleeping. The devourer was waking up. We reached the tower shortly afterward. A single doorway stood at its base. Open. Waiting. Inside rested a pedestal. And upon that pedestal sat a small black object. The key. At first glance it appeared ordinary. A simple metal key. Nothing more. Yet the moment I saw it, a violent headache exploded behind my eyes. Memories flooded my mind. Dreams. Visions. Fragments. The door. The eye. The endless darkness. And something else. A figure. Standing before the black door thousands of years ago. A man wearing armor unlike anything I'd ever seen. A crown rested on his head. His face remained hidden. But somehow I knew exactly who he was. The first keeper. The founder. The king. The one who built the locks. Then the figure slowly turned. And revealed my face. The vision shattered. I collapsed to one knee. Blood poured from my nose. Again. The others rushed toward me. But I barely heard them. Because another memory had surfaced. A memory that wasn't mine. A memory buried somewhere deep inside me. A voice echoed through my mind. Ancient. Familiar. Terrifying. The keeper returns. Not a prophecy. Not a prediction. A recognition. The messenger hadn't mistaken me for someone else. It knew exactly who I was. And for the first time, I realized something horrifying. The dreams hadn't been calling me to the door. They had been calling me home. Then the key lifted off the pedestal by itself. The air grew colder. The shadows deepened. And from somewhere behind us, the messenger's voice echoed through the ruins. "No," it whispered. "Let's see which side you choose." The heartbeat beneath the mountain accelerated. And for the first time since entering Sector 11, I genuinely feared the answer. The key floated 3 feet above the pedestal. Perfectly still. Perfectly balanced. As if invisible hands held it in place. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The underground city seemed to hold its breath. The heartbeat beneath the mountain continued. Faster now. Stronger. Boom. 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 Each pulse shook dust from the ancient ruins. The devourer was waking up. And somehow, the key knew it. The messenger emerged from the darkness beyond the tower. It didn't rush toward us. It didn't need to. Hundreds of black-eyed villagers followed behind it. An endless crowd filling the streets of the First Kingdom. Watching. Waiting. The messenger smiled. "You finally remember." Its many voices echoed through the cavern. The statement wasn't directed at Warren. Or Rachel. Or anyone else. It was directed at me. Because something inside me had started changing. Fragments of impossible memories continued surfacing. Ancient images. Ancient emotions. Ancient fears. Things no human should remember. Yet somehow I did. The floating key slowly rotated. A symbol became visible along its shaft. A crown. My stomach tightened. Because I had seen that symbol before. Not in Sector 11. Not in the Chronicle. In my dreams. hidden on the armor worn by the first keeper, the man with my face. The realization terrified me. The messenger noticed. Its smile widened. "Tell them." I remained silent. "Tell them what you are." The pressure inside my skull intensified. Memories exploded across my vision. Not dreams. Not hallucinations. Memories. Real memories. A city burning beneath a black sky. Millions screaming. A gigantic door rising from the earth. Ancient kings kneeling. Armies dying. Mountains splitting apart. And one man standing before the catastrophe. A man wearing a crown. Holding a black key. Making a choice. Then I saw his face. My face. Again. Reality snapped back. I nearly collapsed. Rachel caught my shoulder. "What is happening?" I couldn't answer immediately. Because I finally understood. At least part of it. The first keeper wasn't my ancestor. Wasn't my relative. Wasn't someone connected to my bloodline. He was me. Or something that had once been me. The messenger nodded, as though hearing my thoughts. Reincarnation. The word echoed through the ruins. "No." Warren's voice was firm. The messenger laughed. "You still cling to small explanations." Its black eyes shifted toward the chief ranger. "This is older than reincarnation." The creature pointed directly at me. He built the first lock. The underground city fell silent. Every ranger stared at me. I wanted to deny it. Wanted to reject it. But the memories wouldn't stop. They kept returning. More detailed now. More complete. I remembered standing within the First Kingdom. I remembered the war. I remembered the seals. And worst of all, I remembered the choice. The First Keeper had not created the locks alone. The Devourer wasn't the original enemy. That revelation struck harder than anything else. Because for thousands of years, humanity had been guarding against the wrong threat. The messenger took another step forward. "The Devourer is dangerous." Its smile faded slightly. "But it isn't the worst thing trapped here." The heartbeat beneath the mountain continued. Boom. 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 Yet suddenly it felt less terrifying. Not harmless. Never harmless. But smaller. A prisoner. Not the jailer. Rachel looked horrified. "Then what's behind the door?" The messenger finally stopped smiling. For the first time, genuine seriousness entered its expression. "The opposite." Those two words chilled the cavern. "The opposite of what?" Warren asked. The messenger looked toward the darkness above. Toward the world beyond the mountain. Toward the black door waiting on the hill. Then it answered. "The Devourer consumes worlds." Silence. "The thing behind the door creates them." More silence. The revelation felt impossible. Wrong. Yet deep inside, something recognized the truth. The memories continued returning. Ancient civilizations. Ancient wars. Ancient mistakes. And a conflict far older than humanity. Creation versus consumption. Order versus hunger. The door wasn't locking away evil. It was locking away power. The First Kingdom had feared what that power might do if controlled. And someone had tried to control it. Someone who became known as the Empty King. The title surfaced from memory. I remembered him now. A ruler. A visionary. A tyrant. A man who believed humanity should wield divine power. A man who believed the force behind the door could reshape reality itself. And for a time, he had been right. The messenger watched my expression carefully. "You remember him?" I nodded slowly. The creature's smile returned. "Good." The key drifted closer to me. The air grew colder. The heartbeat accelerated. Boom. 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 The Devourer sensed what was happening. It knew the key had awakened. Then another memory surfaced. One the messenger hadn't expected. One so shocking that I froze. The First Keeper and the Empty King had not been enemies. They had been brothers. The realization hit like a hammer. Brothers. founders, rulers of the First Kingdom. One wanted to unlock the power beyond the door. One wanted to seal it forever. The war that followed destroyed everything. The kingdom, the people, history itself. And at the end, the first keeper made the ultimate sacrifice. He split the key. The physical key remained hidden beneath the mountain. But the second half, the essential half, was bound to a soul destined to return again and again. A living lock, a living safeguard, a living prison. Me. The key suddenly flew into my hand. The instant my fingers touched it, the entire underground city shook violently. Cracks raced across the streets. Statues collapsed. Ancient towers crumbled. The heartbeat became deafening. Boom. 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 The devourer roared beneath the mountain. The sound echoed through every stone, every corridor, every corner of the buried kingdom. It knew. It finally knew. The complete key existed again. The messenger spread its arms. Now you understand. I stared at the object in my hand. Its surface glowed faintly. The crown symbol burned like fire. The truth felt overwhelming. I wasn't here because the door chose me. I was here because I had chosen this thousands of years ago. Everything had been arranged. Every dream. Every vision. Every warning. Every coincidence. All leading to this moment. The messenger stepped closer. Open the door. Rachel immediately raised her weapon. No. The creature ignored her. Its eyes remained fixed on me. End this. The words echoed through the cavern. You built the lock. Another step. You can remove it. Another step. The choice is yours. The heartbeat intensified. The mountain groaned. Far above us, something shattered. The sound echoed downward like distant thunder. Elias suddenly looked terrified. More terrified than I'd ever seen him. His face went pale. No. He stared upward. No, no, no. Warren followed his gaze. Then his expression changed too. Fear. Pure fear. What happened? I asked. Nobody answered immediately. Then Owen whispered the words. The words none of us wanted to hear. The door. Silence. A second passed. Then another. The tracker swallowed hard. And finished the sentence. The door just opened. At that exact moment, a blinding white light erupted somewhere far above the underground city. Not darkness. Not shadow. Light. Pure. Infinite. Ancient. And every creature in the cavern, including the messenger, immediately turned toward it in fear. Because something had finally come through. And whatever emerged from the other side. Even the messenger hadn't expected it. The light reached the underground city before the sound did. A wave of white radiance poured through cracks in the cavern ceiling, spilling down ancient stone walls and flooding the ruins of the First Kingdom. Every shadow retreated. Every symbol carved into the city ignited. The entire underground world came alive. Then the scream arrived. Not a scream of pain. Not a scream of rage. A scream of recognition. The devourer. Something beneath the mountain had seen the light. And it was afraid. The realization shook me more than anything else. For days, every warning had centered on the thing below. The ancient monster. The end of doors. The hunger beneath the world. Yet now that creature sounded terrified. The messenger's smile vanished completely. For the first time since I had met it, the creature looked uncertain. Then the heartbeat stopped. Instantly. No rhythm. No vibration. No movement. The silence that followed felt unnatural. Like the entire mountain was listening. Waiting. Then a voice echoed through the underground city. One voice. Not thousands. Not layered. Not distorted. A single calm voice. And somehow that made it infinitely more frightening. Who carries the key? The words spread through the cavern like sunlight. Every statue reflected them. Every stone repeated them. Every crack whispered them. Who carries the key? The messenger stepped backward. The villagers retreated. Even they feared the voice. My grip tightened around the black key. The crown symbol burned against my palm. And deep inside, ancient memories stirred again. Not of war. Not of destruction. Of meetings. Conversations. Promises. I remembered speaking to something beyond the door. Not fighting it. Not imprisoning it. Speaking with it. The memory felt impossible, yet undeniably real. The first keeper had known whatever existed beyond the lock. Personally, the realization changed everything. The messenger noticed. You remember. Its voice sounded smaller now, less confident. I ignored it. The memories continued surfacing. The empty king. The war. The seals. The choice. The truth. And finally the lie. The greatest lie in human history. The first keeper had never intended the lock to last forever. I froze. The revelation struck harder than any monster. Harder than any vision. Harder than any nightmare. Because suddenly everything made sense. The dreams. The summons. The repeated return of my soul. The living key. The lock had always been temporary. A delay? Not a solution. The first keeper hadn't sealed the door forever. He had postponed a decision. A decision meant for a future version of himself. Me. The messenger slowly nodded, as if acknowledging the truth. Now you understand your purpose. Rachel grabbed my arm. Don't listen to it. I looked at her. At Warren. At Diaz. At Owen. At Elias. The people who had become my team. My family. My reality. And I realized something terrifying. None of them truly understood what was happening. Because they couldn't. Only I possessed the memories. Only I remembered the beginning. The voice above echoed again. Closer this time. Who carries the key? The light intensified. Ancient symbols throughout the city glowed brighter. Then the first crack appeared. Not in the cavern. In the messenger. A thin line of white light split across its chest. The creature stumbled. Hundreds of villagers froze. Another crack appeared. Then another. The messenger looked horrified. No! The word escaped in genuine panic. The voice above spoke again. False messenger. The cracks widened. The creature screamed. And suddenly I understood another piece of the puzzle. The messenger wasn't a servant of the thing beyond the door. It never had been. It belonged to something else. Something older. Something hidden. Something that had manipulated events for centuries. The realization struck me instantly. The messenger wanted the key. Not because it served the creator beyond the door. Because it feared it. Warren seemed to reach the same conclusion. His face darkened. You lied. The messenger laughed bitterly. Of course I lied. The villagers began crumbling around it. Their bodies splitting apart into drifting black ash. The illusion was failing. The deception collapsing. The creature's human appearance flickered. For the first time, I saw what it truly looked like. Not a man. Not a monster. A crack. A living crack in reality. A wound shaped like a person. Endless darkness churned beneath its skin. Stars. Voids. Ruins. Entire worlds. The sight hurt to look at. The messenger pointed toward me. You think the creator will save you? Its voice trembled. You think it loves humanity? The light above grew stronger. The creature laughed again. This time sounding almost desperate. The creator doesn't care about your species. The words echoed through the ruins. And neither does the devourer. Silence followed. Because part of me knew it was telling the truth. The conflict wasn't about humanity. Never had been. Humanity was simply trapped between forces far older than itself. The messenger's form continued breaking apart. Chunks of darkness peeled away into nothingness. Its time was running out. Then it looked directly at me. And spoke one final warning. There's a reason you locked the door. The statement hit hard. Because despite all my recovered memories, one section remained missing. One crucial piece. I remembered building the lock. Remembered creating the key. Remembered sacrificing everything. But I couldn't remember why. Not completely. The messenger smiled weakly. You still don't know. Its body fractured again. Light poured through the cracks. You remember the creator. Another fracture. You remember the empty king. Another. You remember the war. The creature's smile widened. But you don't remember the choice. The air became still. Every ranger listened. Every remaining villager froze. Even the mountain seemed to wait. The messenger pointed toward the light above. Toward whatever had emerged through the door. Then it whispered, "Ask it what happened to the first kingdom." The creature shattered. Gone. Not dead. Erased. Nothing remained except drifting particles of darkness. Silence returned. The messenger was gone. The villagers vanished with it. The underground city felt emptier. Older. Sadder. Then the voice above spoke one final time. And this time it addressed me directly. Keeper. The word carried no hostility. No anger. No command. Only recognition. The same recognition I had seen in the eye beyond the door. Come! The white light intensified. A pathway formed through the ruins, leading upward, toward the surface, toward the open door, toward the truth. Elias looked terrified. Rachel looked worried. Warren looked exhausted. But none of them tried to stop me. Because deep down, they knew what I knew. This had always been where the journey ended. Or where it truly began. I looked down at the key. The crown symbol pulsed softly. Ancient memories continued gathering. The final missing pieces waited somewhere above. Near the open door. Near the Creator. Near the answer that had shaped thousands of years of history. I started walking. The others followed. And as we climbed toward the surface, only one thought occupied my mind. If the Creator wasn't the enemy, then what had frightened the first keeper enough to lock it away? Because whatever that answer was, it had destroyed an entire kingdom. And I was about to remember it. The climb back to the surface felt longer than our descent. Not because the distance had changed. Because reality itself was changing. The deeper white light spread through Sector 11, the more unstable everything became. Ancient tunnels shifted. Stone walls cracked. Entire sections of the First Kingdom collapsed behind us. Thousands of years of secrets were dying. Or perhaps waking. Neither possibility comforted me. The key remained clenched in my hand. Warm now. Almost alive. With every step, more memories returned. Fragments becoming complete. Questions becoming answers. And answers becoming nightmares. By the time we emerged from beneath the church, I remembered enough to be afraid. The village was gone. Not destroyed. Gone. The houses. The roads. The wells. The statues. Everything had vanished. Only the hill remained. The church stood alone beneath a sky that no longer looked natural. The clouds had split apart. Above us stretched an endless ocean of white light. No sun. No stars. No moon. Just brilliance. At the center of it all stood the black door. Wide open. The impossible doorway had become a gateway. A column of radiance poured from within. The sight was beautiful. Terrifyingly beautiful. The kind of beauty that made mountains seem small. The kind that made human history feel insignificant. And standing before the open doorway was a figure. Human-shaped. Motionless. Waiting. The moment I saw it, another memory surfaced. The missing memory. The final memory. The truth. I stopped walking. My legs nearly gave out beneath me. No. The word escaped before I could stop it. Warren immediately noticed. What is it? I stared at the figure. And remembered everything. The First Kingdom. The empty king. The Creator. The war. The lock. The choice. The truth wasn't what anyone expected. The Creator had never threatened humanity, never attacked the kingdom, never demanded worship, never sought control. The empty king had been right about one thing. The power beyond the door could reshape reality, create life, create worlds, create possibilities. But power wasn't the danger. Knowledge was. The Creator had shown humanity the truth, the complete truth, the structure of existence, the nature of time, the endless realities beyond reality, the hidden machinery behind creation itself. And humanity had gone mad. The first kingdom hadn't been destroyed by monsters. It had collapsed beneath understanding. People couldn't handle the truth. Civilizations shattered. Faiths died overnight. Governments imploded. Families murdered one another. Entire cities descended into chaos. Not because the Creator attacked, because knowledge broke them. The first keeper eventually realized the horror. Humanity wasn't ready. Perhaps never would be. So he made the impossible decision. He locked the Creator away. Not to imprison it, to protect humanity from it. The realization hit me like a physical blow. The Creator wasn't evil. The devourer wasn't the greatest threat. Truth itself was. The figure standing before the door slowly turned toward me. Its face became visible, and every ranger immediately froze. Because the figure looked exactly like me. Not similar. Not close. Identical. The same face. The same eyes. The same features. Rachel stared in disbelief. "What the hell?" The figure smiled gently. No malice. No deception. Only sadness. "I was wondering how long it would take." Its voice matched my own perfectly. The sight unsettled me more than any monster. More than the messenger. More than the eye. More than the devourer. Because deep inside, I already knew who I was looking at. The first keeper. Not a memory. Not a vision. The actual first keeper. Alive. Waiting. Impossible. Yet undeniably real. The ancient guardian stepped away from the doorway. "The lock is failing." His gaze shifted toward the mountains. The earth immediately trembled. A roar echoed from beneath the world. The devourer. Louder than before. Closer than before. Awake. Completely awake. Cracks spread across the hilltop. Massive fissures raced through the ground. The church bell tower collapsed. Stone exploded outward. The mountain itself was splitting apart. The devourer was escaping. At last. Warren raised his rifle. As though bullets might matter. The first keeper gently lowered the weapon. "They won't help." The chief surprisingly obeyed. Then another roar erupted. A section of the mountain collapsed entirely. And something emerged. At first my mind refused to process the scale. The thing rising from beneath Appalachia wasn't merely large. It was impossible. A colossal shadow stretched across the horizon. Larger than forests. Larger than mountains. Its form constantly changed. Cities appeared within its body. Oceans churned beneath its skin. Entire landscapes flickered across its surface. The devourer wasn't an animal. Wasn't a creature. It was a force. A cosmic hunger given shape. And it was free. The sight stole every breath from my lungs. The first keeper remained calm. As though he had always known this moment would come. "The choice is yours." He looked at me. Then at the key. Then at the open door. The meaning became obvious. I finally understood why the key existed. Why my soul returned. Why the lock had never been permanent. The choice could never belong to one person forever. Each age had to decide for itself. Lock away the truth. Or face it. The devourer roared again. The mountains shattered. Entire sections of Sector 11 collapsed into darkness. Time was running out. The first keeper extended his hand. "Keeper." His voice remained calm. "What do you choose?" The world seemed to hold its breath. I looked toward Warren. Rachel. Diaz. Owen. Elias. Humanity. Then toward the Creator. The source of truth. The source of knowledge. The source of possibility. Finally toward the Devourer. The eternal hunger. The force that consumed everything. And suddenly I realized something both entities had in common. Neither cared about humanity. Not really. The Creator created. The Devourer consumed. Both followed their nature. The responsibility had always belonged to us. To humanity. To the keepers. To those forced to choose. The answer became clear. I raised the key. The crown symbol blazed. White light erupted across the hilltop. The first keeper smiled, as though he had known all along. Then I broke the key. The sound echoed across reality. Not metal, not stone. Reality itself cracking. The key split into two pieces. One half flew toward the Creator, the other toward the Devourer. The effect was immediate. The light changed. The darkness changed. The balance changed. The Creator's power surged outward. Not uncontrolled. Not unrestricted. Shared. The Devourer's roar transformed into something else. Confusion. Weakness. Limitation. The ancient force began shrinking. Collapsing inward. Its endless hunger constrained. Bound. Not imprisoned. Balanced. For the first time in existence. Neither force dominated. Neither force ruled. The old system died. A new one emerged. The first keeper laughed softly. Relief filled his expression. The burden had finally ended. Then his body began fading. The ancient guardian looked toward me one last time. You chose differently. I nodded. His smile widened. Good. The first keeper vanished. Gone. At peace. The light spread across the mountains. The Devourer receded. The open doorway slowly closed. Not locked. Not sealed. Simply resting. The war that began thousands of years ago was finally over. At least, that's what I believed. Until something moved inside the closing doorway. Something neither the Creator nor the first keeper had mentioned. A silhouette. Watching from far beyond the light. Far beyond the darkness. Far beyond both forces. A third presence. Ancient. Patient. Unknown. The door closed completely before I could see more. But the brief glimpse was enough. Because whatever stood there, it had been watching everything. The Creator. The Devourer. Humanity. The Keepers. All of it. And somehow I knew the truth. The oldest mystery of all still remained unsolved. 3 months after Sector 11, I was officially declared dead. According to federal records, Ranger Station 7 lost an employee during a catastrophic landslide deep within restricted wilderness. Search efforts were conducted. No body was recovered. Case closed. That was the version given to the public. The truth was considerably stranger. The truth usually is. I sat on the porch of the rebuilt station and watched dawn spread across the Appalachian Mountains. For the first time since arriving, the mountains felt normal. Not safe. Never safe. But quieter. The oppressive pressure that had hung over the region for centuries was gone. The dreams had stopped. The whispers had stopped. The door no longer called my name. Most nights, I actually slept. Which felt like a miracle. A few feet away, Chief Ranger Warren leaned against the railing, drinking coffee. The old man looked older now. Relieved. But older. Sector 11 had taken something from all of us. Even the survivors. Especially the survivors. You ever think about retiring? I asked. Warren laughed. Every day. Then why don't you? He stared toward the horizon. Because the job isn't finished. Fair answer. The job was never finished. Not really. The Appalachian Wilderness Authority still existed. Monsters still existed. The impossible still existed. We had ended one crisis. Not all of them. Far from it. Behind us, the station door opened. Rachel stepped onto the porch carrying a stack of folders. Her expression suggested work. Too much work. As usual. You have visitors. I frowned. We get visitors? Not these kinds. That immediately caught my attention. Rachel handed me a file. The folder carried no official markings. No agency logo. No classification labels. Nothing. Which somehow made it more concerning. I opened it. The first photograph nearly made me drop the folder. A black door. Not the same one. A different one. Standing in the middle of the desert. My stomach tightened. I flipped to the next image. Another door. This time beneath the ocean. Another. Inside an abandoned city. Another. At the center of a glacier. My pulse accelerated. The first keeper had been right. There wasn't only one door. There never had been. I looked up. Where did these come from? Rachel's expression darkened. That's the problem. What? No one knows. The answer wasn't reassuring. Warren set down his coffee. 3 weeks ago, these started appearing. I examined the photographs again. Each image contained a different location. A different environment. A different door. The implication felt obvious. The lot beneath Appalachia wasn't unique. Sector 11 had been one piece of something much larger. Something global. Maybe older than humanity itself. Then I reached the final photograph. Unlike the others, this one showed people. A research team standing beside a door somewhere in Antarctica. 7 individuals. All smiling. All alive. At least when the picture was taken. Written across the bottom was a note. Handled by Division 9. I looked up. What's Division 9? Neither Warren nor Rachel answered immediately. Which meant they knew. And didn't like the answer. Finally Warren sighed. A department that officially doesn't exist. That's helpful. It isn't supposed to be. The old ranger took the folder. Then pointed toward a specific symbol visible on one photograph. A circular emblem. 3 overlapping rings surrounding a black star. The symbol felt strangely familiar. As though I had seen it somewhere before. Then a memory surfaced. Not mine. The first keepers. Ancient councils. Ancient maps. Ancient warnings. The symbol appeared there too. Long before modern civilization. Long before governments. Long before recorded history. My blood turned cold. Because that meant Division 9 wasn't new. It was old. Very old. Older than anyone realized. The station radio suddenly crackled. Everyone froze. For months, unexpected radio activity had become a bad sign. A very bad sign. Static filled the room. Then a voice emerged. Female. Calm. Professional. This is Director Hale. Rachel's eyes widened immediately. Warren muttered something unpleasant under his breath. Apparently they recognized the name. I didn't. The transmission continued. Chief Ranger Warren, Ranger Pierce, and Ranger. The voice paused. Almost amused. Keeper. I didn't like hearing that title. Not anymore. The radio crackled softly. We need to talk. Warren approached cautiously. About what? Several seconds passed. Then came the answer. The third force. Silence. The mountains suddenly felt colder. I remembered the silhouette inside the closing doorway. The figure neither the creator nor the devourer had acknowledged. The thing watching from beyond both. The thing that shouldn't have existed. The radio crackled again. Director Hale sounded grim. We've spent 80 years trying to identify it. 80 years. That immediately bothered me. Because the silhouette had seemed much older. Much, much older. The director continued. Last night we finally succeeded. Nobody spoke. Nobody interrupted. The silence felt heavy. Then the voice delivered the sentence that changed everything. It has a name. My stomach tightened. Warren looked concerned. Rachel looked pale. The radio hissed softly. And then Director Hales spoke the name. The cartographer. The moment I heard it, something deep inside my recovered memories reacted. Not fear. Recognition. Ancient recognition. A memory surfaced instantly. The first keeper standing before a map unlike anything human hands could create. Entire universes drawn across impossible parchment. Infinite realities catalogued like roads on a highway. And at the center of the map stood a figure carrying a lantern. Watching. Measuring. Recording. The cartographer. My blood turned to ice. Because suddenly I remembered something else. Something the first keeper had forgotten. Something he had desperately tried to erase. The Creator hadn't built the doors. The Devourer hadn't built the doors. Neither force created the locks. Someone else had. Someone older. Someone who mapped realities the way humans mapped continents. The cartographer. The radio continued. Our teams discovered another door yesterday. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then Director Hale delivered the final piece. The door wasn't locked. Silence. Absolute silence. I felt the mountains around us. The forests. The world itself. As if everything was waiting. Listening. The director's voice became almost a whisper. And something came through. The transmission ended. Static filled the station. No one spoke. Not Warren. Not Rachel. Not me. Outside, dawn continued spreading across the mountains. Birds sang. Wind moved through the trees. The world looked normal. Ordinary. Peaceful. Yet I knew better now. Because hidden behind reality were forces older than history. The Creator. The Devourer. And now, the cartographer. The first war had ended. The balance had changed. The lock had been broken. But somewhere beyond the edges of existence, a new game had already begun. And for reasons I didn't yet understand. I had a feeling the cartographer knew my name too. The end. For now.